Hi guys, it's Jack and Lorraine back again with another video, and today we're talking
about how to prepare for
video games!
Yay!
Yes, it's a collective passion of ours, video games. We are gamers ourselves.
We are. What's your most fond game that you've played?
Well, unfortunately, I don't play any modern games as I don't have the capabilities to do so at the moment, but I do love my retro games. I cherish my Super Nintendo. I've been playing Super Mario Kart recently. Takes me back. Great game. What about yourself?
So I have fond memories of GoldenEye 97.
As in the Nintendo 64 game, GoldenEye.
And I finished it. I completed it.
Good.
Almost at the cost of my A levels, but so worth it. Good.
Anyway, so yeah, we're talking about voicing in video games today, and giving you some top tips, hopefully top tips, on how to be prepared to do a video game session as a voiceover.
Indeed. And in video games, there are a variety of roles that a voice can voice, and they can include being the narrator of the game and explaining to the player about what is happening to the game and in the game.
They could be not NPCs or non-player characters who the player-controlled character or the player character interacts with throughout the game.
And helps them with hints or tips or tells them which way to go in the game. Or it could even be the cutscenes in a game.
The filmic moments within the game that establish plot and character, reason and rhyme.
And set up the next scene.
Or just do something cool.
Which is cool.
Also happens.
Exactly. So a good way to prepare for video games, most video games, when the scripts come in, they may be like film and TV and radio scripts. However, a lot of them are generally in a form of Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, and the reason for this is generally because it's more to help the game developers. They'll need to program in where those bits of dialogue come into the game. For instance, there may be a trigger, like for example,
say I'm an orange seller.
Say that Lorraine is an orange seller
in a marketplace
as an NPC, and the trigger would be the player coming up to her, and then she might spout off something about her wares and how her oranges l'orange is the best l'orange in the land or something.
Exactly.
Or it could also be programmed into the player character for emotes, for instance, like jumping or slashing with a sword. Makes different noises.
About emotes later on.
Yes, we will. In the meantime, yeah. So Excel spreadsheets is generally what your dialogue will come in, and it will normally come along with some description of your character, known as
sides. Sides are brilliant because they're usually an A4 piece of paper, and they have a picture, hopefully a visual, of the character you're going to play, and a brief description about them and any accents or any in particular quirks for the character. Now, visually, this is great because if, like both of us, you kind of work visually as well, seeing a character sketched out, drawn out in their colours, what they should be wearing, doing, etc., is really helpful in terms of giving characterisation and vocal performance to lines which in an Excel spreadsheet are actually quite dry. And what is great about that is that you can then understand and interact with what the character is and will be in the game.
And typically, if you see what a character is going to look like, then that's going to influence how you vocalize and perform it. For instance, if you saw that the character that you're playing is meant to be rather sort of stocky, muscly kind of man, you probably would put on a different kind of voice than you would for, say, a woodland fairy. Would have a very different voice, and that's not always obvious in the script. They don't always put notes as to what the character should sound like in general for the character, which is why the description and the picture is very important, very helpful.
It's very good. So, and then also when auditioning for video game characters, unless you're going to, we kind of think if you're going to do something different, do a different twist on take, so do one take as they want, but maybe do a different take. And this has happened to you, John.
Yes, we were talking about this earlier. Basically, I was auditioning for a video game, and there's a few different. They'd asked me to audition for a few different characters. I mean, but there was one character which I looked at, saw the picture, read the description, and it said North American accent. I thought, okay, fine. But actually, looking at the character and reading the dialogue, it's like, well, actually, this would work. I think this would work quite well in a British accent. So what I did was I did one take in American, one take in British, and sent them both off. And in the end, the developers came back to me and asked me to do the character and to do it in the British accent. So that helped them shape that character based off of my sort of input to it. And I think it also helped me stand out in the audition as well. And I'm not suggesting you do this every time you audition, but only when it's appropriate, that you suggest an alternative.
Exactly.
You never know what could happen.
Exactly.
And it certainly worked in my case.
And when you start voicing a video game character, what we kind of like to discuss, and as a voice, feel free to ask this question, is where are you in this game? Because content you have, but context is essential. Because if, for instance, we are an NPC character greeting the player in the game, we might say something like, hello there. Simple hello there.
Which, let's face it, on its own, could be interpreted in a variety of ways.
But let's say subtext, exactly. And the context of this is, where are we? Because it's very different if we're in an alleyway and we're saying, hello there, maybe it starts.
Hello there.
Yes, exactly. Or what if we know them really well and we're out in a busy marketplace and it's full of busy people and we see them across the marketplace, so it would be much more of a projected, hello there!
And of course, if they're friends of the player, then it might be like a hello there. And if they're enemies of the player, hello there.
So there are very, very different ways that we could have said that, and that's why it's important to understand the character as well as the context of where you are. Where are you in that moment? Is it nighttime? Is it daytime? Are you in a dry environment? Is it wet and rainy? Is it windy?
Are you in a place that your character feels comfortable? Are you in a place that maybe they feel a bit alert and hostile?
Yes. Or have you come to the end of something? Have you run a long way and you're exhausted giving these lines? Or are you at the start of the conquest of your journey?
Exactly. So there's a number of things that need to be taken into account, and usually with individual pieces of dialogue in that Excel format, they will have some direction in terms of how to perform that line. But obviously you would put that through your filter of your character description. So you interpret like how that character would be scared, for instance, compared to just generally putting on a scared voice.
Exactly. So, and what we mentioned earlier was emotes. These are a key thing, and we've left them to the end because these are exactly where they should be in a voiceover session.
And speaking of emotes, we have a very emoteful person with us today, a special guest.
I've just been listening in. I enjoyed that so far.
Hello, John.
Hello, this is John.
I'm a colleague for these two fine people, but I also work in video games. I have done since 1999. I used to work at Rare, when in fact made GoldenEye, as I mentioned. And I've done I've not done lots and lots of voice work. I've done voiceovers by virtue of working at the place. But emotes I've done zillions of. And emotes
what are emotes?
Well, you tell them what emotes are.
Well, emotes are effort noises, really.
Effort noises is a great description, yeah. So it's usually reserved for the player character. It may be a bit for NPCs as well, but generally it's for physical exertion or for emotional exertion. Just general noises that will be sort of peppered in throughout the game. Triggers
Mario, for
like
example,
Mario jumps.
When he jumps and characters jump,
Wahoo!
Exactly. And he might do a light jump, a medium jump, or a heavy jump. And so all of those have to be vocalized.
And similarly, when he gets attacked and hit, he goes, "Whoa!" That's another emote. There you go.
Very good. And John has actually done quite a lot of emotes for a very famous character.
I have Fable, the first Fable on the Xbox. The main chap in Fable, who starts as a little boy. When he's a grown-up, I was doing the sound design, and I ended up doing all his emotes. So if he's wielding his sword around, he'd be going, huh, huh, huh. Anyway, I did all those sounds in a stationary cupboard at the game development place, Lionhead, with a DAT machine and a microphone, because
Don't tell me these things, don't tell
I
me
just
these
needed doing it. And I just went in the stationary cupboard and did. So yeah, but the magic was there. No one listening to that thought, hey, this sounds like a stationary cupboard.
That's true, that's true. And here we have the fabulous Fable.
Yes, well, I mean,
The Fables.
I can't remember what it was called,
Fable.
Fable Bloke. Anyway,
Fable
keep telling
Bloke.
him about emotes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there we go, that was John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much. And he was helping us tell us extraordinary things in the station.
He was emoting. He was emoting.
Exactly.
Totes emotes.
So a number of ways that you could do emotes when you get them. Always have them at the end of the session, and repeat that again, because it is taxing on the voice, especially if you are going to do some sort of war game or a shooter game where you are going to have to do a lot of
Shouting and screaming.
Shouting.
Grunting. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you, but yes.
And
all those kind of noises, and you're going to be doing such a variety of noises. Emotes range massively, from the loudest of the loud to the quietest of the quiet, and everywhere in between, depending, of course, on what the context is and what the character is. But generally, emotes, you're going to be doing a lot of different things. So you are really going to be playing tonsil Olympics, I guess.
There we go, tonsil Olympics.
Yeah, that's right, tonsil Olympics.
So when you come to the emotes, there are a few ways that you can do them. You can do an ABC on them, and we've discussed, light, heavy, medium jumps, but you could also do work on the vowels, so A, E, I, O, U, and work through those when you are giving the emotes for a fight or a hit or a punch, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh,
there we go.
And these are really good ways of doing them, and then you can mark them off as you go recording them. Another one is crying. Crying is an emote, and you can have different crying states, from very weak cry to a full-on tantrum, including
full-on wail.
Full-on wail,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Full-on wail.
And wailing is, and then wailing, screaming, all those kind of things.
And it's all going to cause, it's going to be a lot of taxing on the voice, you could say. It's really going to wear you out. That's one reason to put it at the end. Another reason to put it at the end as opposed to at the beginning is generally because emotes, you could be there for a long time doing emotes if you wanted to. So rather than doing it at the beginning and then say you end up spending 10, 15 minutes doing emotes, you then leave yourself 45 minutes of that hour session to do all the lines, when in fact, actually for the developer, they're going to want the lines done first, because that's the priority, and the emotes, it's as much as you can do afterwards. Because as far as a developer is concerned, the more emotes they have to play with, the better. However, it's not as crucial to them as it is to getting that original narrative done, the original lines in.
And the reason that there are emotes and they're done repeatedly a few times is simply because when the player is playing the game, they want to be immersed in the story, and if you play the same emote sound again and again, they're going to be yanked out of that story. So it's really important to give different emotes for the different situations and different outcomes the character might find themselves in.
Variety really is the spice of life when it comes to emotes. And your game developer friends will love you for it.
Exactly.
I think that covers pretty much everything on video games.
It really does.
But anyway, I hope you found that useful. If you like this and our content, please do give us a follow. We appreciate it, really do. Give this video a like, that would be great as well. Anyway, yeah, until next time, I've been Jack.
I've been Lorraine, thank you very much.
Bye!
Bye.